and welcome to Sports Stars Aren't Special. I'm Clare Craig.
And I'm Keith Russell. And this is the podcast where we get to know the person behind the profile.
It's also a podcast which aims to show when sports stars aren't excelling in their field, they're pretty much like the rest of us.
In this episode, myself and Claire are delighted to say we have the pleasure of speaking to professional squash player, writer, comedian, multi-talented Orla Doherty.
We hope you enjoy the episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Orla, welcome to the show.
Hi, Keith. Hi, Claire. It's lovely to be here. And I might just say I'm a former professional squash player. I'm a bit old now in the tooth to be still, dragging my bum around the court.
I think you're being very modest there, Orla, from what I've been reading about you. I think you're quite a formidable player, I'd say.
Yeah.
Well, I do still play in the Masters Tour, which is basically anybody over the age of 35. And I got a bronze medal there at the World Champs last August, in Poland. So I do, I tinker away.
Well, as we were saying, so you're former professional squash player. We'll go with that for now. So, So obviously that's a massive passion of yours, the sport. And as I said in the intro, you've got your writing going on, your comedy going on, and you've loads of things going on. And of course, we'll get to them in due course. But I wanted to start with the squash. So, as this is obviously sports stars aren't special, we kind of want to know is when was the moment or the special moment when you discovered your passion for sport or your passion for squash?
Well, I suppose I started playing when I was 10 because my mom was quite sick when I was younger and spent a lot of time in hospital. My dad used to babysit my brother and I, and he'd bring us to his squash games after work, and we'd have to sit there doing our homework and be quiet. This is back in 1982, probably. And I suppose I got fed up one day and I just got on the court and grabbed a racket. And back in the day, they had old, really heavy wooden rackets, which I don't know how I held it at a 9-year-old who was nearly as heavy as myself. But I enjoyed it. It was great. I loved just hitting the ball. The nice thing about squash is you can play by yourself. And I loved being in the court and just hitting the ball up and down the wall and getting frustrations out. Not that I had many frustrations at 9 years old, but it was just really fun. You can just play by yourself, and I didn't need to have a pal. But fast forward, when I was about 13, I was asked to represent Leinster. We had the junior interprovincials back then. So Leinster, Ulster, Munster and Connacht would all compete every year. And that was like a huge highlight to be selected on the Leinster team. And you'd get your little uniforms and you'd jump on the bus and go away for the weekend and represent your province. And then about 4 years later, when I was 17, I was playing in the Irish National Championships in Fitzwilliam Lawn Tennis Club. And there was players from all over the world there, from Australia and everywhere. I suppose at the time the English players were very strong, and one of their managers saw me playing against the world number 2, and I got demolished, now I have to say, but he saw potential in me and he invited me to go to England after I did my leaving cert to train with the professionals and become a professional squash player. And what kid wouldn't think, oh my God, what an opportunity to be asked to do such a thing. So of course my parents weren't overly pleased. I did do the leaving cert, and I'm not saying I did too well, but I was just pushing to really do this because I was dying to get away from home. I was brought up in a very strict Catholic family, and I was a bit of a rebel, and I had lots of other things going on which we'll talk about later. And I was just dying to get away. And when I did, I went to England. I was 18. I stayed there for 3.5 years, and I trained with actually 3 of the former number 1 players in the world. I got to be top 70 in the world, which was, I was delighted with myself. But you can't really make a living as a squash player. At least back then you couldn't, unless you had massive sponsorships or, I still needed to work. But what an experience. I traveled all over the world. New Zealand, Australia, the Middle East, everywhere, just playing squash. So it was an amazing opportunity for me as an 18, 19, 20-year-old to do. And I loved it. I loved as I say, the sport is an individual sport. So it's very different than a team sport. And, the training part of it was hard, but it was disciplined. And I suppose not really breaking the top 50 was what brought me back to Ireland. I'm sort of going fast forward now to 1991 when I returned. But I continued playing, and I've an interesting sort of a journey, because I left to go to America. I'll tell you the reason why. I know you're going to ask that dreaded question. Why did I leave Ireland? And I ended up staying in the States for 20 years and coached in high profile universities. I coached at Cornell University, which is one of the Ivy Leagues. I coached in lots of elite, prestigious clubs. But it wasn't until, funny enough, I came back to Ireland in 2015 and decided I'd throw my hat in the ring again. So I was 47, I think, and I made the Irish national team, the actual proper national team, like not the Masters team. So I was playing on an Irish squad with 21-year-olds and 22-year-olds, and I was like the mammy. But we got to go to the European Championships, and it was, you know, my matches were all against kids, really. But it was such a huge thing, and they gave me the honor of being the flag bearer in the opening ceremony, and maybe they felt sorry for me. I was the granny, you know, but, it was such an amazing emotion, I suppose. And I just, the fact that I could sort of do that and come around and come back. And actually a year before that, I'd had a little mini stroke. I was in hospital for a week, and I don't know what, I met Cliona O'Connor, who you might know. She was the goalie for Dublin football for years and years. And she asked me for a squash lesson one day when I was working out in Portmarnock, and we struck up a friendship. And it was her who sort of said to me, why are you not still playing? Like, you're not half bad. And she was working, I think, with the Dublin men's football team. So she really took me under her wing and got me fit and training again. And she became my sports coach, like from a mental standpoint. And it's something I'd never actually addressed when I was on the pro tour. I never really looked at the mental side of things. And you know yourselves how important it is, not just to be physically capable to play, but the whole mental side of it, I'd never really looked at, never touched. And I think under Cliona's guidance, that's how I did so well, and how I'm sort of continuing to do so well, just working on the brain.
The brain, yeah. And just to go back, Orla, like the resilience you have, like, and obviously the competitiveness, like you really had something special, I think, from quite a young age, going back to doing your homework on the squash courts. But like, when did that kind of become apparent to you? Like, I'm kind of good at this. Like, obviously there must have been a moment where like, this is going to be a big part of my life.
Yeah, I'd say I was probably 14, and I remember I'd just come back from, I had won the Irish Junior Championships Girls Under 15, and it was in Galway. And when I came back, I was sitting at the back of my geography class in school, and I hated geography, like with a passion. And I remember my geography teacher saying something under his breath, like, "It's a pity you're not as good at geography as you are at squash." And but that was like, that for me was like, well, maybe you're right, you know. So and I sort of went with it. I know, imagine the things they used to say back then. You have to laugh, right? And I think that was definitely a key moment. And also the fact that when I won that competition, I was in Galway playing against the local girl from Galway. She was the number 1 seed. I was 2-love down. And in squash, you play the best of 5 games, and it's the first to win 3. So I was 2-love down, and I somehow fought my way back. And I remember my mom was sitting in the crowd. She was the only one cheering me on from Dublin. Everybody else was from Galway. And it was a huge, and to sort of find that belief inside yourself when you're down and out, you're you know, to dig that deep, to pull back and then win. And then your geography teacher tells you, like, pity you're not as good as geography. I hated geography. I still struggle with geography. I don't know where I am.
Yeah, see you later, geography. It's not going to be geography, Orla. It's going to be squash.
Yeah,
decision.
Exactly. Yeah, so I was probably 14 or 15 when I had that
epiphany.
Yeah, exactly.
Very cool.
You were saying a while ago that you kind of broke into the top 70, and you didn't really stay at it. But is there a tier in that where you can kind of really only make money from? So like, obviously some sports, you know, are global, but maybe squash isn't as well, you know, as popular as other sports. So is the tier kind of smaller in that?
Yeah, and so 2 things. So in the 90s, if you're not top 50 in the world, or if you weren't, it was very difficult to sustain and make a living. I was coaching part-time and I was working in a bar, but most of the top 10 to 20 players would have their own sponsorships. They get free flights everywhere. They get put up in hotels. And so nowadays it's much different, in that, I think if you're top 50 in the world, there's so many more tournaments nowadays that, there's one every weekend in somewhere in Malaysia or Singapore or somewhere. And the money, the sponsorship is so much better now that I think players in the top 100 even are able to successfully make a living. But it's really great that we're talking about this, because I don't know if you heard, just last week, we've been waiting 50 years for this. Squash just got selected into the Olympics in LA in 2028. Now, when I was a kid, that was a dream.
Yeah.
We've all in Irish squash and all over the world have been rallying for as far as I can remember, 20 years to try and get squash into the Olympics. And it just got announced, which is just incredible. So that sort of gives you an idea of how much it has grown around the world and how bigger it is, and it has become. When I was top 70 in the world, there was probably only 150 women playing, so yeah, I mean, now there's thousands.
Will you be dusting off the racket for the Olympics, Orla?
I'm thinking about wiping off the pot.
No better woman.
Go on a diet,
I don't think you need that, Orla. I know that you're spoken a lot about being down the gym, working hard. So I wouldn't doubt that call up could come. So you never know.
I see you in the gym, Clare, and you're like avid.
Well, I try. I try my best. But that's just the good days. But like everyone else, we do what we can in the gym, and it does really help the head and stuff, doesn't it?
The head, it's so good for us. I try to continue. I have a spin bike here. I hop on it whenever I can. And then, I've written a few pieces for The Independent about mobility, and just as you age and you lose 2% muscle mass every year over 50. Would you believe? So that's actually staggering. Wow. And so I try to just continue with strength and conditioning, like not heavy weights, but just to do something every day, just to keep the old body going,
So important. And when you went off to America, I know this was a big turning point in your life, wasn't it? Because you were lucky in squash, and not just lucky, obviously you're extremely talented, but you entered the lotto, is that right, to get the green card?
Yes. So, and will I backtrack to the reason why?
You feel free.
Might as well. So I came out to my parents in 1993, and it was March of 1993, and it was still illegal for men to be gay in Ireland, not for women, for some reason. So, so I came out to my parents, and picture a strong Catholic household. I was the only daughter. My parents were really devastated. My dad was more concerned that I'd get bullied. I wouldn't find happiness in Ireland. And he said to me, why don't you apply for the green card in the lottery? And, you'd have a better life over there, et cetera, et cetera. And I always listened to my dad. So I did. And a bunch of my friends, I was working in Break for the Border at the time. You're probably not to remember Break for the Border. A bunch of my friends applied, and I was the only one to get the letter in August of 93 saying you have received a green card. And they literally gave you a month to decide you're going or you're not. So I went to the States with £300 at the time in my pocket. Went to San Francisco, which is at the time was the biggest gay capital in the world. So I was like a little child in a sweet shop.
That worked out well, yeah.
It worked out very well.
Yeah.
And I suppose it was a time in my life that, because I'd come out and I was all mixed up, and I was 22 years old, and I had given up squash because I was disappointed I hadn't broken through to the top 50. And so a lot of things had gone wrong, but going to America was probably the best thing that could have happened to me. I did take 2 or 3 years off where I went crazy in San Francisco, and I did all the drugs and I did all the everything you can imagine, and ended up in Vegas, would you believe, working as a private investigator. It's just something I always wanted to
Hang on, sorry, say that again. You're a private investigator.
I know that always stops people in their tracks. Yeah, it was something I always sort of wanted to try my hand at. And I would do weird jobs. Like I would sit in casinos, and the manager would give me, say, $50 worth of quarters, and I would have to play the slots and watch the bartenders to see if they were pocketing the money when they would give away drinks. And then another job I had, I used to follow people. People would hire me to, is my husband having an affair? And do you know what? I did one of those. I had this car that was a 1970 Datsun Toyota, and I used to start it by rubbing two wires together. It was so old. And trying to chase people down the highway in Las Vegas wasn't the best thing to do in this little car. But I did manage to track this one guy. And unfortunately for his wife, he was having an affair with a man. And do you know what? At that point, I thought, I'm going to ruin somebody's life here. And so I just said, I can't do this. Like, it was all fun and games and the slot machines and everything. But and then the most random thing happened. I was living with my girlfriend in Vegas, and I stumbled upon a tennis club where Michael Chang used to play, and Diana Ross and all these big time famous people. But I went in, and there was a squash court, and you had to sign in as a guest because it was very posh and fancy. And I picked up a racket and I started hitting a ball. And I hadn't hit a ball in 3 or 4 years. And my girlfriend didn't even know I played squash. And while I was hitting the ball, there was a woman standing behind, and I could see her kind of staring at me. And she came on the court and she's like, excuse me, but who the hell are you? Obviously I could hit a ball. And I said, oh yeah, I used to play, blah, blah, blah. And I left it at that. And she was just kind of stumped. But I went into a massive depression. I quit the PI, the private investigator job, and I was staying at home. And this woman, her name is Amy Milanic, I'll never forget it. She tracked me down from the sign-in sheet at the front desk, and she came to the house and literally insisted that I start playing squash again. I mean, it gives me goosebumps. I call her my squash angel.
She is, isn't she? Yeah.
And because of her, I started playing again. I trained with her in Las Vegas, and that started off my career as a coach for 20 years. And only for her, and obviously going to America, I had such a great career as a squash coach, and I played lots of championships in the US, and I think I won 5 US national championships in my age group from 35 to 40 to 45. So if it wasn't for Amy or me just stumbling into that squash club, I don't know what I would have done. I certainly wasn't going to be a private investigator.
That wasn't going to work out.
Yeah, definitely not.
Wow. I didn't see the podcast going that direction, to be honest. I don't even know where to start with this next question. Right. You've done so many stuff. I was going to ask you, is there anything is there any occasion where you haven't felt special? Is there anything that you're not good at?
It's an important question on this podcast.
Yeah. I don't know if there is an answer.
That you're not good at, Orla.
I don't think there is an answer.
I'm not good at the guitar. No, I can play the piano. I mean, if you want to get really deep and meaningful, which I love to do, I was always extremely insecure as a child, and I always felt like I was not good at being good looking or attractive. And I used to get teased. I was called Freckle Puss. I had the most unmerciful set of teeth with a big gap in the middle. And I was an ugly child. I really was. But the way I dealt with it was I was the class joker. I was the class clown. And I used to just try and be the funniest. I'd stand up on the table in the science lab and do a jig and get in trouble from Miss Mulroy. I remember her. But I always used humor, I think, as a protection, as a wall, because I was extremely immature. I was probably immature, but I was definitely insecure.
Yeah.
I wasn't good at being good looking.
Could have been good looking. Okay.
I'm still not very good at being good looking, but it doesn't bother me anymore.
Yeah.
And Orla, I'm just really interested as well, like you said, like when you went to San Francisco, was it 19 you went to, or your 20s?
22, yeah.
But like, I'm from Balgriffin, just down the road I can imagine Fort Marnock, not too far. Like, so, I mean, to go from, an Irish Catholic conservative North County Dublin village, like that must have been crazy for you. You were very brave as well, just to head off.
It was wild. I think I always had a wild side to myself, and I always did listen to my dad, and sadly he passed away. But when I landed in San Francisco, everything was huge. I mean, the cars were massive, the airports were massive, the shops were massive. And it was just so exciting for me because obviously I'd just come out and I literally landed in Castro, which I don't know if you know, it is the biggest gay capital in the world. And, you know, I sat in a bar by myself and looking out the window, you'd see men walking down holding hands with just chaps on, nothing else. So you'd see their bare cheeks, you know, at the back. And everybody seemed so happy and comfortable in their skin. And that for me was just, it was like being in a movie. It really was. And yeah, I was in awe for so long. It was unbelievable when you think back to Portmarnock and
Like,
little chapel.
what a contrast, you know what I mean? It's just
complete. Yeah.
You probably could make a movie from your life, to be honest, or
I'm actually literally taking notes here to buy the rights to this movie.
Well, I have written my memoir.
Yes. And that's going to be exciting as well.
Yeah, and I got picked up by an agent there about a month ago.
Congratulations.
I know, I'm beside myself. But it's all because of my co-writer. I have a co-writer, Val Troy. We write comedy screenplays together. And she had been in touch with them and they wanted to represent us together as a duo for our screenplay. And then I sent them my memoir and they kind of had the same reaction you're having. They're like, Jesus Christ. So we'll take this on, you know. So I don't know what sort of memoir it'll go into, like what genre it'll go into, whether it's not really self-help, although there is an awful lot of self-help in it. But it's I think it's about reinvention. Because I have sort of not, I mean, I used to give up on myself a lot, but I always came back with something else to do and trying new things. And I mean, I think this is a Sports Star podcast. My squash has always been there, which is sort of the nice thread throughout my life, and it still is there. But I have reinvented myself quite a bit. During COVID, I couldn't coach anymore. You know, all the clubs closed down, the gyms closed down, and that's when I started writing.
Yeah. Can I just go back to when you said you were a child and feeling very insecure, and obviously you said it doesn't bother you now, which is amazing. But you also had a diagnosis of being bipolar a long time. It was quite a while ago you had that.
Well, I was 30.
Right.
Yeah, so I think the diagnosis probably came a bit late. I was always very either up or very down. And when I was diagnosed, and I do a little bit of this when I do my stand-up set, I talk about how they took me in. I had been running naked through the streets. I was just having a good time, had a few drinks. I mean, who wouldn't, right?
Wouldn't. And, your typical night on Camden Street. Yeah,
I know, right? Exactly. So I don't know how I ended up in hospital, but anyway, the security guard had my shoelaces, and I was, you know, because they take everything away that might harm yourself. And I tell this story, how the doctor came in and says to me, "Well, Miss O'Doherty, we've had a look at your behavior, and you know you get depressed, but you also like to be the center of attention." And I had a straitjacket on, right? And I said to the doctor, I said, "Would you mind taking off the straitjacket? I have to talk with my hands." And then I said, "I don't think I'm bipolar at all. I'm just Irish." Because I just thought, I didn't even know what bipolar was. Like everybody, right? I'm right? I see you laughing, Claire. So, but it was a hard road because I remember my brother thought I had some sort of, you know, North Pole disease. He did polar bear. Nobody really understood what bipolar disorder. This is it was 1999. And in Ireland, even then, I think mental illness was still quite taboo. You know, I mean, if you had it, you wouldn't talk about it the way we do nowadays. You certainly wouldn't admit to it. But yeah, they basically, I have bipolar 2 disorder, which is sort of not as extreme as bipolar 1, but you have episodes maybe once or twice a year where you could go just extremely manic. You do a lot of online shopping.
I like that.
That means I have it as well.
Right. We're all bipolar, right? Or, you know, you do extreme things like you probably drink a bit too much, or, you know, you're very daring, and you're almost the word grandiose they use a lot. Like you just think it. But then I quickly crashed, and I had a lot more depressive episodes than I would high.
What would that look like? What would show, like, compared to, you know, grandiose, then? Like what's a depressive episode look like?
Yeah, so just I used to suffer, and I still do a little bit actually, from extreme paranoia, where convinced everybody was talking about me, and I, just saying things about me, and I'd lock myself in a room for a week and would not want to talk to anybody. And even if, let's say I had a meeting like this with you guys, I'd find every reason under the sun not to do it, because I'd just be petrified. Now, the great thing is, I'm 22 years on, excuse me, I don't have these issues as much, I'll say, anymore. But they were very strong. And they say that in your 30s, if you do get diagnosed with bipolar, your 30s are sort of the years that it's quite extreme. It's not that I've grown out of it, but I think I found ways to really understand it better and manage it better. And I surround myself with really cool people, and I don't drink as much. But I was medicated for 12 years. I was on antipsychotic drugs. I was on lithium. I was on all kinds of stuff.
Did you hate them?
I hated taking them, and I used to stop taking them. And you're not supposed to do that. It's really like dangerous. And I used to stop. I was in 5 different psychiatric wards in 10 years. Like, I was in and out all the time. But every time I went in, I was so dying to get out that I'd be on my best behavior. The doctors loved me. I set up ping pong leagues, and I, play cards with but I have some great stories, all the people I met in there, which is in my memoir, should you choose to buy it. But I'm not a member. And when it was just before I came back to Ireland in 2014, and I said to my doctor that I felt like I wanted to come off medication. And I'll tell you, one of the reasons I didn't want my doctor in Dublin and Portmarnock to know that I was on psychiatric drugs. And I said, how? So I'm moving home to Ireland. What am I going to do? So I had a long chat with him, and it took me probably 7 months. You're supposed to really be careful when you come off them. You have to wean yourself off, because you can go into, convulsions, or it's very dangerous to just stop antipsychotic meds. So 7 months, I stopped taking them slowly. So I'd go from maybe 5 tablets to 3 to 1. And I think I was very lucky in that I was so strong-willed in that I wanted to stay off them, that I did everything I possibly could to stay off them. Now, I'm not saying I didn't have my dips, and, when you're back in Dublin and you're out drinking and you haven't seen your friends in 30 years, of course, so I'd have those nights out and then wouldn't be seen for 3-4 days. So I had to really sort of work my way back into living in Ireland. But again, found squash. I set up a coaching club in Portmarnock. I was working with lots of kids there. All the kids of the people I went to school with, they're all, my friends had all grown up now. They had kids, and I had a great little setup there. So I'm really glad to say it's been nearly 10 years now. I'm not on any medication, apart from a glass of Prosecco, occasionally.
Yeah, I mean, we're all on that, Orla. That's just prescription for most of us, so
right.
That's normal.
Yeah.
Very normal. And do you get, like, it's hard to compare coaching or playing? What do you enjoy more? Is just different?
I much prefer playing now. I love coaching. There's something great about coaching, especially when something connects with a kid or an adult, and the light bulb moment, and they finally make connection with a drop shot or a particular serve or drop or whatever. I love playing now because, first of all, I always say how lucky I am to be alive at 50. Some of my friends are not even here. They didn't even make it. And not only am I alive, but I'm able to run around and chase a little black ball. And so I always count my blessings there. And I enjoy playing now more than I ever did when I was on the Pro Tour. Because on the Pro Tour, I had this tremendous pressure on myself. You have to do well. You have to be the best. You have to win. Now, I'm so relaxed when I play. Like, people come and they watch my matches and they just have a good laugh, because I'm always goofing around, and I just enjoy it. And it's a great workout too. I hate running.
Yeah.
But I play squash any day, so I'm really lucky.
And I know I've seen some of the photos that you have some very cool kit, very bright kit.
Oh, the Lucky in Love stuff.
Yeah, Lucky in Love, it's fab.
Yeah, so I was sponsored by them just before COVID. The year that I was working with Clean O'Connor, I was training for the World Championships, and the Worlds got cancelled because of COVID, but they held the European Championships in Vienna. and I was sponsored by Lucky in Love, and they gave me these, just you saw it. It's like so
So
bright.
cute.
I have
Yeah,
this
so nice.
amazing gold jacket, and I won the Europeans that year, and I wore the gold jacket. Everybody wore, I think 100 people tried on the gold jacket that night at the party. But that was really meaningful for me because my cousin, who I'd gone to school to, did the Leaving Cert with, Mark Cullen, had sadly died by suicide 3 weeks before. And I went into a hole. Like, I just thought, there's nothing more, what's a squash game when he just lost his life. And it was Cleena really who said, look, Mark would want you to play. You should go. I wasn't going to go. I was out drinking every night, smoking cigarettes. I was at the fittest of my life. And then that happened and I went backwards, as one does. But I went and I did it for him and I won. And I put no pressure on myself. But, these things happen to all of us. It's tragic. Yeah.
As Claire was saying earlier on, you're so kind of resilient and, you just kind of put your hand to anything, really. I mean, that must have been like we were asking earlier on, when did you not feel special? I mean, like trying to just go and play a tournament with that grief running through your body is just,
That's a great point, actually, Keith. Yeah, that would be the moment. Yeah. Because what's a game of squash compared to somebody's life,
Yeah.
So I got a tattoo in his honor when I won that.
Oh, that's very cool.
Wow.
Every time I look at it now, it reminds me. Yeah.
It's very cool. And Orla, like, with everything you've accomplished so far and everything you've overcome, what would you say was the biggest obstacle up till now that you've had to overcome?
The biggest obstacle is probably you won't believe it, but it's my self-confidence. I never really believed in myself in anything. Now, I always did everything, but behind closed doors, I was always just very negative. And I think that's why I started writing. But when I turned 50, I said, fuck it. When I can't say that, sorry. I said,
you can.
You can, yeah.
You can.
I said, what? Because 3 people close to me had died. And here I am. Why? Like, am I that important that I shouldn't feel like it was just this moment where I said, fuck it. I have to believe in myself. And now I do, maybe to the extreme, because I'm doing all this, wacky stuff and comedy clubs and running comedy shows. But I do believe in myself. And I think overcoming my self-confidence, that was probably the biggest obstacle I had is not believing in myself. And then finally, like, 50 is old. It took me a long time to, get there.
Yeah. It took you 50 years to get there.
I know, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that if someone asked, Claire, if you asked me that question, that would be my answer as well. I mean, I'm not 50. I don't mean that part, but I mean overcoming the self-confidence.
Self-confidence.
I'm only 27.
But and as my dad said, like, Joe Biden only started a new job, so to me, only
that's
a young person.
We noticed,
baby.
So like 50 is a young one.
Yeah.
That definitely. And in terms of the comedy, I saw you doing a great job in Ireland AM the other day with Amanda and Val, isn't it? Val as well.
Wow. Yeah.
And so really, I was thinking about you in the school in Portmarnock, and now fast forward, you're on the stage performing. So it's come full circle.
And at Whelan's, of all places, where we used to go and watch, Hot House Flowers and all those bands back in the day, it's absolutely mad. I'll tell you how it happened. When I first moved back to Ireland in 2015, one of my friends said that Cherry Comedy in Whelan's were looking for some new acts. And I had never done comedy before in my life. And she said, can I put your name forward? And I said, why? And she goes, you're really funny. And I just said, all Irish people are funny. Anyway, long story short, I went and did it. And Joanne McNally was headlining that night.
No pressure.
Yeah. I know. But it was also a stroke of luck because I had never done it before. All I did was talk about my, getting diagnosed with bipolar disorder, bringing my dog back from America and using the dog as an emotional support animal, which I shouldn't laugh. And that's all I talked about. And it went over really well. And I chatted with Joanna afterwards, and she encouraged me to keep going. So I did the comedy circuit for about a year. And then I said, no, I'm not doing this anymore, because it's going in on a Tuesday night to the Halfpenny Bridge and you do a 10-minute set and you might not get home till 12 or 1 in the morning. And for what? Like, and with my mental health, it just didn't serve me to be doing that sort of thing. So I stopped doing it. But then when COVID hit and I started writing, and I joined writing the Writers Inc. group, which is run by Vanessa Fox O'Loughlin and Maria McHale. And it's a private group online. And Val had joined at the same time. This is 2020. And I had submitted a piece that I'd written. I write a blog and I share all my life stories, but I write it with humor. And Val also was a comedy writer. And so we saw each other's writing and we naturally gravitated towards each other. And about a year went by, we would critique each other's pieces. And then we said, we'll meet for a pint and talk about polar opposite people. I mean, I'm this outrageous gay, you know, I'm on my third wife. She's married to a lovely accountant. She was an accountant. She has 3 beautiful kids. She's from Mayo. I'm this nutcase, but our personalities are so different that we actually, it worked really well. She's quite dry and deadpan, and I'll like say anything, and then her reaction to what I say, like I'll blurt out the stupidest things, and it works. So we decided we'd write a screenplay together, which we did, and we submitted to the Female Pilot Club, and it got longlisted. And then we thought maybe we're onto something here. And then Val said, well, I want to try stand-up comedy. So she did in Hysteria in Chennai in just April of this year. And she was fantastic and she loved it. And it just so happened that the woman who runs Funny Women in the UK, which is now a 20-year-old non-profit organization for female comedians, saw that Val had done this. And she said, oh, we're looking for somebody to run Funny Women chapter in Ireland, because since COVID we've had nobody. And at this point I am with my confidence, my newfound confidence. I said, we'll do it. Yeah. So Val and I contacted her, and in June, it literally happened within a month, we'd organized this big comedy show in Little Whelan's, but after the first day it was sold out. So we're like, so why don't we just go to the main stage? Like, are we mad or what? Val is also she just turned 50. So we did, and I'm sure, and I hate to say it, I'm sure there are a lot of comedians out there saying, who the hell do these two chancers think they are, coming in and running a comedy show at Whelan's? But we did it anyway. We had a great night, and we had a singer, and we had Barbara Scully come in. I don't know if you know Barbara Scully.
I know Barbara Scully.
Legend. Oh my God. So she was going to kill me. I said to her, Barbara, you have to come on the show. She's like, I'm not a comedian. I said, no, but you're funny. So she agreed to do it, and she stole the whole show. She had the audience in the palm of her hands, and we had a fabulous night. And then you sort of get, after the show, we crashed and burned. We didn't speak to each other for like 2 weeks. And then, because you get to, like, you go down, you know, and they're on such a pause, such a high. But then suddenly it was like, so now what? And the woman in the UK said, well, you have to do another show. And Val had just met Deirdre O'Kane at her dementia tour, and was kind of like joking with her and said, oh, you know, would you ever come on our show? And Deirdre said, actually, yeah, November would be great, because I will have just finished my dementia tour. I'll have some new material. So we jumped on that, followed up, got a hold of Justine Stafford, contacted Sinead Colbert from the Dirtbirds. I found Sophia Cadigan, who's a new rising star in comedy, and I do hope you both can come to the show and see her. She's incredible. We'd love to have you. We'll put you on the guest list.
Thank you.
And then Amanda rang me, because I'd known Amanda from previous, and she said, Orla, do you know what I've never done? I said, what, Amanda? What is it that you've possibly never done? She said, I've never done stand-up comedy. I want to give it a go. So of course, Amanda Brunker wants to come on your show. You're not going to say no. So it was thanks to Amanda she got us an Ireland AM, and it's like things have just gone so fast. I mean, I'm sure you'd never heard of me nor Val ever, and suddenly we're on Ireland AM, and we're with Amanda Brunker, with Deirdre O'Kane, and we're running this comedy show, and it's going to be epic. It's going to be brilliant. So you have to come.
It is absolutely incredible. It's amazing. It's funny just listening to you, because I mean, obviously the other stuff that we were talking about, but like this other stuff that you were talking about a few minutes ago, I can relate to. Obviously, the self-confidence and stuff. But like a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, a stand-up comedian, he's a well-known one, and he said to me before, you should be a stand-up comedian, and because he said to me, I'm very funny, and I said,
you are funny, Keith.
But you are.
But it's funny that he said that to me, because I have I've said this to other people that I haven't said publicly until now. I'm screwed now, but I've always wanted to give it a go. But so the fact that you've done it, I think is incredible. No, I know what you're going to ask me. I'm not doing it. So like,
I can get you in.
I don't. So can he, and I'm still not doing it.
It's gonna happen.
Like I got to move quickly on from that because I don't want to talk about me doing it. So I've got two questions for you, right? First question is, and please say yes to this. Please tell me the name of your memoir is I'm Not Bipolar, I'm Irish. Please tell me that's the name of it.
That was like, please tell us that's the name.
If it's not, you have to change it.
It's not. That's actually really good, isn't it?
It is actually, yeah.
Yeah.
Good name for a podcast as well.
Yeah,
I know, right? Yeah, it's called The Fish That Learned to Swim, for a number of reasons. Because obviously, a fish should know how to swim when it's born. And my life, I always felt like I was swimming against the stream. I was always battling things. You know, I figured out that I was probably gay when I was 10, and that was an internal war for me because I was going to go to hell. And I loved Holy Mary, and you know, I went to Lourdes and did all the things, and I applied to be a nun actually when I was 17, and they rejected me, and they said that God had bigger plans for me. Look at the Keith's face.
It's like, is there anything you haven't done, Orla?
Fuck God, we need to do 2 parts to this podcast.
I've never jumped out of a plane.
Yeah.
So The Fish That's Learned to Swim, I thought was kind of it's a catchy name, and Vanessa, who helped me come up with it, thinks it. So the cover of my book is like the bones of a fish, right, and the skeleton of a fish, and each chapter gets fleshed out as I grow, and then become. And ironically, when I was 50 was the first time I ever learned how to swim. I never could swim, so that's another sort of kind of cool. My wife is from Malta, and she threw me in the sea there. She was annoyed, and I had to battle for my life. No, she taught me how to swim there, and I think it's just a nice name. But I do like I'm Not Bipolar, I'm Irish.
You can have that one. You can have that one.
Yeah. I think that's one of the best things I've ever heard as well. So something to think about, Orla. Something to think about.
Yeah.
Can I ask one more question before we have to get on to our quick fire questions very quickly? Well, I have one other question. It's not really a question. Well, it kind of is. So I was watching an interview you did, Orla, and you were talking about when you were coaching in MIT, obviously in Boston.
Wow.
And you were but you were talking about coaching the guys, and I just thought it was funny that the fact that, of course, they're all scientists and all these, you know, very clever people, and they're playing squash, and they're all trying to argue with you over the angles to hit the ball and all that type of stuff. You never get that done.
It was unbelievable. I mean, these guys, we would go on our trips to play against other schools, and we'd be on the bus, and it'd be like 3 a.m. we'd have to leave because we had long drives, and they would be studying morning, noon, and night. They were so brainy, I suppose. But yeah, I'd be on the court, and you know, you have a ball and a racket and a floor, and they would be measuring each floorboard, had their rulers out and trying to it was impossible. They weren't the best athletes in the world, but you know, they knew their angles. So it was a tough, probably one of the toughest coaching jobs I had. Yeah, I was trying to keep up with the lads.
Yeah, you did a bit in you didn't do a bit in I know you said, was it Cornell? How do you pronounce that?
Cornell. So Cornell.
Cornell. Yeah.
That was the first Ivy League school I worked at, and that's upstate New York in Ithaca.
Yeah.
And then from there, I had a great job. There was a guy called Greg Zaff who was doing his PhD in underprivileged, helping underprivileged children in the community. And he set up an organization called Squash Busters. And it was for underprivileged, underserved kids who were mostly African-American or Latino, who were in the low-income schools and neighborhoods in Boston. And he set up this organization where he taught them how to play squash. He helped them with their academics and homework, and then did community service projects with them. And now back, what year was this? 1997. I joined him. I was there for 8 years as the squash coach. It was the most fulfilling job I've ever had in my life, helping these families. And it wasn't just about squash coaching. Yes, I was the squash coach, and we did have academic people, but half the time I'd be sitting off the court having chats with these kids about something that happened at school or their lives. And then we go into the families once a year and meet the families, and they'd cook us the most incredible meals from wherever country they were from. this organization has blossomed into now, I think there's probably 30 of them all over the United States. And it's profound. If you look up this guy, Greg Zaff, he's an absolute legend, but I was thrilled to be part of that. And that was probably more enjoyable coaching with those kids than the other fancy jobs I had in private clubs. And I mean, everything has its perks, but this was more meaningful for me. I ended up in Santa Barbara doing the same thing with the local. You would think Santa Barbara is a very wealthy area where all the movie stars live, and they do, but there's a huge part of Santa Barbara that has low income families, and I worked with them as well, and a lot of undocumented families. Some kids' parents got sent back to Mexico, and we would help them get them back in. And I mean, I'm so lucky that I've had these opportunities, more than just squash, but squash is basically the reason that I've been doing everything I'm doing, apart from bloody comedy.
Just like everything I was saying to Keith when you were rejoining there, like it's just incredible, your life. I can see the movie already. So remember us when you're living.
And we already have the name as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You've already got the name.
You two have to direct it.
Oh, we'd be delighted. Hopefully we'll have a small cameo role.
From the background. Yeah, exactly. A small
cameo role. We'll be happy with that, Orla. So we're going to move on to our quick fire round. Are you ready?
Oh, making me nervous. Okay, go on.
Nothing to be nervous about. I'll go first. Okay. Death row meal.
Well, it has to be mashed roast potatoes and gravy. I love my mashed potatoes and gravy, and when they're roasted, you have the little extra crispy bits. I'm happy.
Yeah. That's nice.
I go with that.
That's a good choice, and it's a traditional choice as well. You know, quite like,
isn't it?
I like that. Yeah.
I mean, my second choice, if you want to know, would be Mexican. I love Mexican.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Pretty
nice.
As well.
Nice. Right, we move on. This is supposed to be quick fire. We move on to the next one. Your go-to karaoke song.
Oh God, it has to be "Dancing Queen" by ABBA, because I tend to not only sing it but I dance it.
You know, I joked out Orla for 1 minute. That's not true.
Yeah. We actually couldn't have predicted that, or real.
There are videos.
I'm glad, and I hope maybe one day we might get to see that in person. If your pet could talk, what would they say about you?
Oh, so Nala, that I have really nice toes. She loves when I'm sitting on the toilet. She comes in and she licks my toes incessantly. So I think maybe she has a fetish. I mean, other than that, she might just say, "Have you got anything nicer than that?"
This podcast is just going on another. I'm moving on to the next question.
Level.
We're moving on to the next question. Actually, I don't know if this question helps, but we're going on anyway. What store would you like to max out a credit card?
Oh, let me think about that. I know this is a quick fire round.
Okay. Take your time. It's a big question.
We can edit it out. That's all right. The quietness.
Edit out the pause. I love shopping in. Well, do they have the Gap in Ireland?
It's gone now, isn't it?
It's gone now. Yeah, I think it's online only. We did have it on Grafton Street for a few years. I remember that.
Okay, so I mean, in America, and of course the online stuff always happened when I was hyper and manic. I used to buy everything from the Gap, like from, you know, jewelry to shoes to knickers to you name it. I was a Gap girl. So
nice.
But
the Gap. Yeah. And okay, final question, the quick fire round. If you were an alcoholic drink, what would you be? And why?
I'd be the finest champagne.
Oh, okay.
Although that's what I love. Does that mean that's what I am? No.
Well,
I'm a very.
Well, it's bubbly.
Oh, it has to be a mixed drink because I'm so all over the place. It can't just be one plain drink, right? But it has to be a cocktail. It has to be a Sex on the Beach.
Yeah, Sex on the Beach. I feel like a very unique cocktail because you're very memorable and a good
Not
way.
On the run.
You live on. I'm not bipolar. I'm Irish, and this is your cocktail.
That's the name of the cocktail.
That's the name of the cocktail, definitely.
Like, I've actually got a whole merch line in my head already lined up for this. This is just incredible.
We can have
Easier.
t-shirts, everything.
You have t-shirts.
That's what I mean. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do
Make
it.
a fortune.
Yeah, you could have. I'm not bi. Oh, was it what?
I'm not bipolar.
I'm
Irish.
not bipolar. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks.
Oh,
Hats,
good.
I like it. Keith will take up the merch job after.
Yeah.
You know,
Listen, it's been so much fun.
It's been so much fun. I know.
Really?
And just to recap before you finish, you've got your comedy show coming up in November. Is that right?
November 6th at Whelan's main stage. Tickets are still available on whelans.com, and Deirdre O'Kane is headlining. Amanda Brunker, Justine Stafford, Sinead Colbert from the Dirtbirds, and Sophia Cadigan is going to be there. And then No Spring Chicken, Maria McKenzie. Do you know her?
Maria McKenzie. Okay, her name's familiar.
She's No Spring Chicken on Instagram, and she's very, very funny. She's a beauty influencer, I suppose, and she's my cousin. She's going to do a panel to discuss people's most embarrassing moments from the audience.
Oh my God, so much fun. Keep it going.
It's going to be nuts. You have to come. I really both come. Will you come?
Thank you so much. I'm going. Yeah, Keith's coming.
Yeah. I'm going. She's dragging me along.
Please. I'd love to be there. Yeah.
Oh no, but like I can't wait. It sounds great. I'm very excited to see you perform and all the other wonderful women. I've seen a couple of them before, but not all of them. So yeah, we'll be very excited to see that.
I just love it.
Yeah, that's very exciting. And then people want to find out more about you and your writing, etc. I know you have your own blog as well.
So my blog, I have a website which is orladoherty.com. Easy. And on Instagram, I'm just Orla Doherty Writer. And then Val and I have we are called Chatterbox, and on Instagram we're just we_our_chatterbox. And you can see all our antics on there. So thank you so much. This is so fun. I could talk to you all night.
We'll just keep going, so will we? Do we start again?
Yeah. When will this air?
Yeah, tomorrow.
If you decide to.
No, it's not tomorrow.
If you decide to air it.
It's next week, isn't it, Claire?
Yeah, next week. So Keith is excellent at this. He'll give it a nice edit up and make it all sound gorgeous and everything. So yeah, we'll have it out next week, and we'll obviously tag you and everything. And
you're so good.
Thank you so much for being on the show. Thanks everyone for watching and listening, and don't forget to like and subscribe.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, guys. Thanks, Keith. Thanks, Claire.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Orla.
Orla.
Have a great
See ya.
night. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.